Are we not the future, too, Papa? The innocent question of 7-year-old Prince Louis echoed on a tranquil afternoon at Adelaide Cottage. Yet, it cut into William's heart like a blade. Behind the children's laughter, a bitter truth was taking root, the seeds of division. Each seemingly harmless remark from Queen Camilla that only George was the future of the monarchy was quietly casting a shadow over Charlotte and Louis. William, the son of Diana, felt the past repeating itself. The subtle schemes that once broke his mother now targeted his own children. When evidence of a calculated plot fell into his hands from a guest list, deliberately altered to books accidentally bearing George's name, he realized this was no misunderstanding. It was a war. Can a father defy the throne itself to protect his children's smiles and self-worth? And when the truth of such ruthless intrigues is finally revealed, who will pay the price? Camilla, Charles, or William himself? The afternoon sun, gentle and forgiving, filtered through the tall arch windows of Adelaide Cottage, painting warm rectangles across the polished wooden floor. Inside, the joyful chaos of everyday life reigned supreme. Prince William, a parent and future king, sat cross-legged on a plush rug, an unfinished Lego castle sprawling before him. Beside him, Princess Charlotte, 10 years old and already possessed of a sharp, discerning gaze, meticulously searched for a missing serrated brick. Prince Louis, 7, a whirlwind of boundless energy, cared less for architectural integrity and more for launching tiny figurines from the highest towers with unbridled glee. Careful, Louis. That's a knight, not a catapult. William chuckled gently, intercepting a flying plastic warrior before it could crash into the wall Charlotte had so carefully constructed. Charlotte, ever pragmatic, gave a fond roll of her eyes. He just wants to see everything crash. Papa, not true, Louis protested, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. I'm making it fly. The easy banter, the innocent laughter. It was the symphony of William's life beyond the gilded cage of royal duty. Here in their modest by royal standards home, he was simply Papa, a man devoted to nurturing the joyful spirits of his 3 children. But even in this sanctuary, shadows could stretch long, whispers could pierce, and the delicate tendrils of courtly intrigue could reach out and entwine. It began, innocently enough, a fleeting memory from a recent extended family gathering at Buckingham Palace. Louis Everlunt was recounting the opulent rooms with wide-eyed wonder. And then Granny Camilla told the lady bringing tea, he said, struggling to recall that Charlotte and we don't need to be around as much. Because George is the future of the family. He looked up at William, his bright eyes suddenly clouded. Aren't we the future, too? Papa. William felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He glanced at Charlotte, who had paused her Lego hunt. Her brow furrowed, a faint flush creeping up her neck. Her usual vibrancy seemed to dim, replaced by a pensive, almost sorrowful expression. He recalled that reunion a month ago. Camilla, ever the queen of subtle remarks, had indeed made a few pointed comments over afternoon tea, seemingly harmless, about the burden of the crown, resting solely on young George's shoulders. William had dismissed them at the time as overzealous efforts to prepare George. But now, through the innocent ears of his younger children, those words carried a new cruel weight. It wasn't just the palace visit. In recent weeks, William had noticed a pattern. At family lunches or quiet evenings when Camilla visited Adelaide Cottage, there were always gentle, almost imperceptible reminders. Camilla would praise George's seriousness, his budding sense of duty, his regal bearing, always within earshot of Charlotte and Louis. She would ask George about his studies, his future, his understanding of his singular role, while Charlotte's insightful questions about history, or Louis's animated tales of his latest adventures earned only a polite, if distracted, smile. The seeds of division, William realized with growing dread, were being sown, and they were taking root in the softest of soils. The change in Charlotte was particularly heart-wrenching to witness. Once brimming with confidence, her quick wit and infectious laughter, a constant presence, she now seemed hesitant, her shoulders slightly slumped. She spoke less at dinner, her gaze often fixed on her plate when George was praised for some minor achievement. Louis, too, despite his usual exuberance, had begun asking troubling questions. "Am I good enough, Papa?" he asked one evening, his voice small as William tucked him into bed. "Will I ever matter as much as George?" William's heart ached with a fierce protective love. He was his mother's son, attuned to the undercurrents of emotion beneath the stoic surface of royal life. He remembered Diana's struggles, the cruel ways her spirit had been worn down by a system that valued lineage over personal happiness. He would not let that happen to his children. He knew he had to address it. He sought out Camilla for a private conversation, inviting her for discreet tea at Clarence's house, away from the prying eyes and ears of Buckingham. The drawing room, with its antique furniture and heavy drapes, felt more like a stage for delicate negotiations than a family chat. William began choosing his words carefully. "I've noticed something lately. Charlotte and Louis, they're feeling a bit sidelined, a bit less important than George." Camilla poised elegantly with a teacup balanced perfectly in her hand, raised one impeccably shaped eyebrow. "Oh, William, darling, children are so sensitive, aren't they? I'm sure they're simply misunderstanding. Young minds can be so impressionable." Her voice was smooth as silk, laced with a practiced charm that could deflect accusations, with an air of innocent concern. "I only emphasize George's unique position for his own sake. He carries a great burden, you know." William pressed on, his voice steady, though his hands hidden beneath the table clenched tightly. "It's more than that. The comments, the subtle emphasis on George as the future. It's affecting them. Charlotte's withdrawing and Louis is questioning his own worth." Camilla sighed a soft, almost mournful sound. "Perhaps you're projecting your own anxieties, William. Or perhaps you're too close to see the bigger picture. The monarchy needs a clear line of succession, a singular, undeniable focus. It's for stability." She smiled, a faint knowing curve of her lips. "I only have the crown's best interests at heart, and by extension, your children's future." Her words, though reasonable on the surface, twisted in William's gut. He knew she was a master of deflection, a seasoned navigator of the treacherous waters of courtly decorum. Challenging her, openly accusing her outright, would only escalate into a public scandal. A media frenzy that would surely harm the very institution he sought to protect. The internal conflict tore at him, his fierce paternal instincts clashing with his duty to the crown. How could he shield his children without tearing the royal family apart, just as the weight of his dilemma pressed down a flicker of hope? Or perhaps a new layer of dread emerged. Days later, a soft knock at his study door revealed Mrs. Higgins, a quiet, perceptive housekeeper who had served the royal family for decades. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she handed William a discreetly folded note. "Your Highness," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I thought you should know, Queen Camilla. She's given specific instructions for the upcoming Children's Royal Charity Gala. Charlotte and Louis, they're to be excluded from the official guest list. Only Prince George is to attend as the sole representative of his generation." William unfolded the note, his eyes scanning the neatly typed lines. The blood drained from his face. This was no misunderstanding, no accident. It was a deliberate, calculated move to erase his younger children from the royal narrative, to further cement George's singularity, and in doing so to sow deeper seeds of their isolation. The game, he realized, had just begun, and Camilla was playing to win. The news of Charlotte and Louis' exclusion from the Children's Royal Charity Gala ignited a fierce fire within William. The simmering anger he had suppressed now flared, entwined with a piercing sorrow for his children. He could not stand idly by as Camilla swed seeds of self-doubt and sidelined the two children he cherished most. William knew that to counter a cunning adversary like Camilla, brute force or direct confrontation would not suffice. He needed a plan, a strategy as subtle as it was resolute, to protect his children and cement their place in the public's heart, even if the royal establishment remained wary. Days later, William set his plan in motion. He quietly organized a smaller yet deeply meaningful charity event at a school on the outskirts of London. The concept was simple. Charlotte and Louis would take center stage, reading stories to children and personally handing out books. William believed that direct interaction with other children would help Charlotte and Louis regain their confidence, feeling their worth through impactful actions. At the same time, he wanted the public to see the authentic, endearing side of his children, untainted by the distorted lens Camilla was crafting. "We'll make this event truly special," William told Jane Albright, his trusted communications advisor. Jane, a sharp-witted woman in her 50s with neatly cropped silver hair and keen blue eyes, had served his family for years and maintained a steadfast neutrality in royal disputes. I want the public to see Charlotte and Louis not just as a prince and princess born into privilege, but as children with kind hearts capable of connecting and bringing joy to others." Jane nodded, jotting notes meticulously. "We'll focus on authenticity and spontaneity, Your Highness. No overstagging. Images of the children reading and engaging with others will be the strongest message." William also tasked Jane with contacting a handful of reliable reporters and photographers who had covered his and Catherine's charitable endeavors before. He wanted to ensure the event received widespread positive coverage, highlighting Charlotte and Louis' roles, not just as George's followers. He aimed to spark a wave of public support for his children, a fortress to shield them from Camilla's silent menations. But William had underestimated Camilla's cunning and reach. As whispers of the school event began to leak, Camilla with her private network of informants caught wind of it immediately. She didn't sabotage the event outright. Instead, she opted for a subtler, more insidious strategy. "Let William play his game," Camilla told Marcus Thorne, her senior communications advisor, a man known for his polished exterior and chillingly calculated ability to manipulate public perception. Thorne with his cold eyes and impeccable suit nodded in compliance. "But we'll ensure George remains the story's heart. Spread word that it was George who inspired the idea of reading and donating books, that he cares deeply for underprivileged children even though he won't be attending." And that wasn't all. Camilla orchestrated a smaller, seemingly innocuous plot that could inflict deep wounds. She instructed Thorne to contact the publisher supplying the books for the event, requesting an accidental misprint on a significant number of the donated books. Instead of reading presented by Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, they would say presented by Prince George. The goal was to mislead the public into believing Charlotte and Louis were mere tagalongs overshadowing their true roles. Meanwhile, William focused on preparing his children. He spent hours helping Charlotte and Louis choose books, practicing expressive storytelling. He saw their confidence slowly returning, especially Charlotte's, as she eagerly shared the stories she'd read to the children. But one morning, while scanning online news, William stumbled across an early article from a prominent tabloid. The headline twisted his heart: "Prince George the heir with a heart of gold." While Charlotte and Louis searched for their roles, the piece, while not overtly malicious, implied Charlotte and Louis lacked George's capability, suggesting they weren't quite ready for royal responsibilities and that this charity idea might be a clumsy attempt to boost their image. William tossed the iPad onto the table, a burning rage rising within him. He knew instantly this was Camilla's doing. She wasn't just manipulating public opinion. She was directly attacking his children's self-worth on the eve of their important event. He felt powerless, as if every effort he made was seen through and dismantled with ruthless precision. The betrayal's climax came from an unexpected source. The night before the school event, William was reviewing final details with Jane Albright and another communications advisor, David Clark. David, a young, talented man William had fully trusted as an ally, was unusually quiet. When Jane stepped out to take a call, David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it quickly, his face paling. "What's wrong?" William asked, noting the sudden shift in his demeanor. David stammered, fumbling to hide his phone. "Oh, nothing, Your Highness. Just a routine work message." But William had caught a fleeting glimpse of the Clarence House logo on David's screen alongside Marcus Thorne's name. A chilling suspicion ran down his spine. He was no stranger to the games of power. William demanded to see the message. David hesitated, but under William's steely gaze, he reluctantly handed over the phone. William scanned the text. It was a detailed summary of his entire plan for the school event. Step by step sent from David Clark to Marcus Thorne. At the end, a question. Details on the book misprint confirmed. Everything is proceeding as per Her Majesty's plan. The truth hit like a dagger to William's heart. David Clark, the advisor he thought was an ally, had betrayed him, secretly reporting his every move to Camilla. The sting of deception of being used surged through him. Camilla wasn't just manipulating public perception. She had planted a spy within his own team. William's carefully guarded plan had been compromised from the start. He was at a greater disadvantage than ever, facing an opponent not only powerful, but ruthlessly sophisticated. The morning air at St. Michael's Primary School on the outskirts of London buzzed with excitement and a hint of tension. Prince William masked his unease with a warm smile, gripping Charlotte and Louis' hands tightly as they stepped out of the car. He had spent the night calming David Clark and reworking the media strategy, but the sting of betrayal still weighed heavily on his heart. He knew Camilla had made her move, and today's event could become a battleground of the mind. Charlotte in a soft blue dress looked radiant yet slightly shy. Louis dapper in a tiny suit brimmed with energy, his curious eyes darting around. Hundreds of school children gathered in the courtyard, waving small flags and cheering at the sight of the royals. Camera flashes sparked relentlessly, creating a lively, almost frenetic scene. The event began smoothly. Charlotte and Louis were led to a brightly decorated reading area where a group of eager children awaited. Charlotte, with her sweet, clear voice, began reading a fairy tale about friendship and courage. Louis, initially a bit bashful, soon got swept up in the story, tossing in playful comments that sent the children into fits of laughter. William watched quietly from the sidelines, a spark of hope kindling in his chest as he saw his children slowly reclaim their confidence. After the story, it was time for Charlotte and Louis to hand out books to the children, a moment William had particularly anticipated, hoping it would instill in them the joy of giving. The children approached one by one, their eyes shining as they received books from the young royals. Then the incident unfolded. A little girl with blonde pigtails, about 6 years old, took a book from Charlotte's hands. She stared at the inscription inside the cover. "Oh," she exclaimed, her clear voice carrying through the crowd's hush. "A book from Prince George. Prince George gave me a book." Charlotte froze. She glanced at the book in the girl's hands, then at the one Louis was handing out. Realization hit her swiftly. On many of the books, instead of bearing Charlotte and Louis' names, the inscription read "Only presented by Prince George." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Reporters quickly noticed the discrepancy. Parents whispered to one another. Then another child, bolder than the rest, approached Charlotte, clutching his book. "Charlotte," he asked, his innocent eyes piercing, "why aren't you as good as George? George gave books to everyone." In that moment, Charlotte stood rooted as if all color had drained from her face. Her clear eyes welled with tears, her lips trembling. She couldn't hold it back any longer. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she turned, burying her face in William's chest, sobbing. "Papa, I'm sorry. I'm not as good as George." The entire event seemed to freeze. William's heart felt like it was being crushed. He held Charlotte tightly, a cold fury rising within him. His eyes searched for Louis and found him standing, rigid lips pressed tight, glaring at the books with anger. Suddenly, Louis yanked his hand free from a teacher, trying to guide him to the next reading session. "I'm not reading anymore," Louis shouted, his voice breaking with frustration and rage. "I don't want to read George's books. These are my books. I picked them." A small wave of chaos erupted. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment, snapping photos of Louis' defiant outburst. William fought to stay composed. He gently entrusted the crying Charlotte to Jane Albright, then knelt beside Louis, speaking in a calm but firm tone. He knew he had to defuse the situation to salvage the event from becoming a complete media disaster. Eventually, he persuaded Louis to finish his part, but the event's innocence had been shattered. William's anger burned hotter than ever. He suspected Camilla's hand in this, but he had no concrete proof. What had happened was a direct public attack on his children, wounding them deeply. He could no longer bear to see Charlotte cry or Louis rage over lies and manipulation. In the days that followed, the school incident dominated royal media coverage. Tabloids screamed headlines about Princess Charlotte's tears and Prince Louis' tantrum, contrasting them with the perfect image of Prince George. Public opinion split. Some sympathized with the young royals, but others deemed them not mature enough for royal duties. The pressure weighed heavily on William, leaving him feeling isolated in his fight. Late one evening, as William sat in his study, grappling with how to counter the negative media storm, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number, no sender identified. He opened it to find an audio file attached. "Your Highness," the accompanying message read, "I hope this reveals the truth. Please protect the children." William pressed play. The audio crackled at first, then Camilla's cold, familiar voice emerged, laced with Marcus Thorne's quieter tones. "Ensure those books are credited to George," Camilla said, her tone smug and unapologetic. I want the public to understand George is the heart of all the children's charitable work. Charlotte and Louis are merely supporting players. Make sure everyone's attention stays on George." She paused. "We need a clear message about the crown's future, and that future is George. Whatever William tries, it will be futile." Rage exploded within William. He shot to his feet, eyes blazing. This recording was undeniable proof. Camilla wasn't just sowing division. She had deliberately planned, manipulated, and cruelly targeted his children to humiliate them. Isolation, defamation, and now public diminishment. A steely resolve formed in William's heart. He would not let this continue. He would fight not just for Charlotte and Louis, but for the truth, for his family's honor, and for the future he believed in. A direct confrontation with Camilla was now inevitable. The morning at Buckingham Palace hung heavy with an oppressive air. William carried the recording phone to a private meeting with Charles and Camilla in a secluded room where silent portraits of royal ancestors bore witness. A tumult of emotions churned within him. Fury, pain, and a faint hope that Charles would side with him with their children. Charles sat across from William, his face weary, his gaze averted. Camilla, clad in an elegant silk ensemble, sat beside him, her composure unnervingly serene. She had anticipated William's arrival, it seemed, and was prepared for the showdown. William didn't mince words. He placed the phone on the table and pressed play. Camilla's cold, calculating voice filled the room. Her explicit instructions about the misprinted books and her intent to overshadow Charlotte and Louis in favor of George cutting through the silence. Each word was a dagger to William's heart. When the recording ended, a deathly stillness descended. Charles looked up, his expression, a mix of shock and bewilderment. Camilla, however, didn't flinch. "Camilla," Williams said, his voice trembling with restrained fury. "You've hurt my children. This recording is clear evidence of your scheming. You've deliberately made them feel worthless." Camilla finally spoke, her tone icy and resolute, unshaken. "William, you're blowing this out of proportion. I was merely protecting the royal image. You should thank me for thinking of the crown's future." She turned to Charles with a pained smile. "I only want what's best for everyone, but William misunderstands my intentions." Charles cleared his throat, attempting to diffuse the tension. "William, you need to calm down. We're family, not enemies." "Family," William roared, his pain and frustration erupting. "You let her sabotage my children and call that family. You've seen Charlotte cry," Louis rage, "and you tell me to calm down." He felt betrayed not just by Camilla, but by his own father. Charles's hesitation, his clear bias toward Camilla, cornered William. He had hoped Charles would see the truth, would stand up for his grandchildren. But instead, he opted for weak, lopsided mediation. "I just want to keep the peace," Charles said, his face etched with exhaustion and helplessness. These words might be a misunderstanding. Perhaps Camilla was just overly concerned for George. Concerned for George or for her own position? William shot back, his eyes piercing Camilla. "You've manipulated the media to undermine my children. You've made them doubt their own worth. That's not protecting the monarchy. It's personal ambition." Camilla turned to Charles, her eyes pleading. "Your Majesty, William is letting emotion cloud his judgment. He's trying to drive a wedge in our family. That recording could be fabricated. Your son is attacking me without cause." Caught between his wife and son, Charles seemed at a loss. He bowed his head, rubbing his temples. "William, go home. Let me speak with Camilla privately." William stared at his father, a profound disappointment welling within him. He had seen enough. Charles wouldn't stand with him. Not now. After that tense confrontation, the rift between William and Charles deepened. Camilla, unrepentant, intensified her campaign against William. She secretly instructed Marcus Thorne to spread rumors that William was pressuring Charles, causing him mental distress. Articles began to surface insinuating William was an ambitious, unstable prince who disrespected his father. William felt as though he were fighting alone in the dark while Camilla controlled the light. He tried reaching out to Charles, but his father consistently evaded him. On a rainy afternoon, as William sat brooding in his study at Adelaide Cottage, an unexpected visitor arrived. Arthur Jenkins, a former aide to Charles. Arthur, an elderly man who had served the royal family loyally for over 40 years, carried a somber air. "Your Highness," Arthur said, his voice heavy with regret. "I apologize for coming unannounced, but I thought you should know this. He hesitated, then continued. His Majesty, he's not unaware of what Camilla has done. Years ago, when he and Camilla first married, there were similar incidents. Malicious rumors about Diana, about you and Prince Harry appeared in the press. Charles suspected Camilla's involvement then, but out of love, he chose silence. William felt a cold shock pierce his core. Father knew. Arthur nodded mournfully. Yes, Your Highness, he knew. But he was too in love with Camilla to confront the truth. He feared exposing her would shatter their relationship and plunge the monarchy into another scandal. He convinced himself it was mere coincidence or baseless gossip. Hearing this, William's disappointment deepened beyond anything he'd felt before. Not only had Camilla betrayed him and his children, but his father, the one who should have been his rock, had long enabled her behavior. Charles had chosen personal love over truth and justice for his own son. This revelation cut deeper than any of Camilla's manipulations. William realized his battle wasn't just against Camilla, but against the silence and secrets entrenched in the heart of the monarchy. He had to forge a new path, a way to expose the truth without needing his father's approval or consent. After the bitter confrontation with Charles and the revelation of his father's silence, William was plunged into a maelstrom of emotions. Anger, disappointment, and a profound sadness intertwined with an unshakable resolve. He knew he had to act, but how could he expose the truth without causing an irreparable rift in the royal family? William began his search. He spent long hours in the royal archives at Buckingham Palace, a labyrinthine repository of history that few dared to explore. It was a maze of centuries-old letters, documents, and buried secrets. He sifted through dusty boxes and faded files, hoping to uncover anything that could shed light on Camilla's schemes. His persistence was rewarded. In an age box labeled Personal Correspondence of Queen Elizabeth's Sissa 1990s, William discovered a collection of letters not from Elizabeth but from Eleanor Vance, a former confidant of Camilla, addressed to a close friend, written in the years when Camilla began her public relationship with Charles after Diana's death. The letters revealed a chilling truth in an anxious tone. And Eleanor described how Camilla from the very beginning sought to secure her position beside Charles by subtly sidelining anyone who might pose a threat. Camilla has always been wary of Diana's popularity, one letter read. And now she's working to overshadow both William and Harry. She wants to ensure Charles has only one powerful woman by his side. The letters also hinted that Camilla was already eyeing George, the future heir, as a means to cement her long-term influence in the monarchy. She sees George as a little puppet she can control to ensure her power is never challenged. William read the letters repeatedly, each word searing into his mind. This manipulation wasn't new. Camilla had been orchestrating it for years, and her target wasn't just Charlotte and Lua, but anyone who might stand in her path to absolute influence. Meanwhile, during a routine check of his work emails, William received another message from the same anonymous address that had sent the school incident recording. This time it contained a video. He opened it to find a grainy, covertly filmed clip in a palace corridor. In it, Camilla was speaking with Marcus Thorne, her communications advisor. "I want you to ensure any article about William has a certain edge," Camilla said, her expression calculating. "Emphasize his inexperience or any hint of impulsiveness. The public needs to see that George is the only stable choice." Hearing those words, a cold wave ran down William's spine. Camilla wasn't just aiming to eclipse his children. She was targeting him directly. She was using her power and cunning to dismantle his entire family piece by piece. Now, William faced his most difficult choice yet. He held undeniable evidence. The old letters exposing Camilla's long-standing manipulation and the new video proving her deliberate campaign to smear him in the press. Going public with this would destroy Camilla, stripping her of power and reputation forever. But it would also devastate the monarchy's image, sparking an unprecedented scandal. More crucially, it would expose Charles's weakness and complicity, a man William still wanted to respect despite his eroded trust. Camilla, sensing William held a significant secret, escalated her smear campaign. Rumors about him multiplied in the press. He was arrogant, unlistening, and destabilizing the monarchy with unreasonable demands. William felt cornered, isolated, and exhausted. Then, in a handwritten diary entry tucked among Eleanor Vance's letters, another horrifying detail emerged. Eleanor had recorded a conversation with Charles years earlier. In it, Charles admitted he had read her warning letters about Camilla's manipulations, but had chosen to conceal them, even ordering Eleanor to stay silent. His Majesty told me he didn't want to believe it, she wrote. He wanted to protect Camilla, even knowing she might hurt others. William closed the diary, shock and pain overwhelming him. His father hadn't just known he had deliberately hidden the truth for years. Charles had enabled Camilla's schemes, allowing her to continue her machinations not only against him and Harry in the past, but now against Charlotte and Louis. The pain of William and his children was a direct consequence of Charles's choices. William realized his father's blind love had created a monster and unrelenting threat to their family. There was no turning back. Now, William had to expose the truth, not just for his children, but for justice and the monarchy's integrity. Yet, he wouldn't do it by destroying his family. He would find another way, a wiser path, one that would make Camilla defeat herself. With irrefutable evidence in hand, the old letters exposing Camilla's long-standing manipulations, and the latest video proving her intent to smear him, William stood at a critical crossroads. Going public would be a ticking bomb, destroying Camilla, but unleashing a tidal wave of scandal that could engulf the monarchy. He had promised his children they would always be loved and protected, a vow stronger than any thirst for vengeance. William refused to become part of an endless cycle of intrigue. He needed a different kind of victory, one that delivered justice while safeguarding his children in the crown's honor. William chose not to release the damning evidence. Instead, he planned a live television interview, a stage where the truth could be revealed subtly without relying on old letters or secret videos. He wanted the public to draw their own conclusions, guided by his sincerity and love for his children. The interview took place in a simply adorned studio, yet it captivated millions worldwide. William sat across from the reporter, his gaze steady, exuding calm but radiating inner strength. He began by sharing his boundless love for Charlotte and Louis, speaking of the joys and anxieties of being a royal father. "Charlotte and Louis are the heart of my world," William said, his voice warm and laden with emotion. "I will never let anyone make them feel worthless or doubt their place in our family and in my heart. The monarchy should be a place of love and unity, not a stage for personal schemes or ambitions." The reporter, a sharp-witted woman, caught the undertone in his words. "Your Highness, who are you referring to?" she probed. William looked directly into the camera, his eyes piercing through the screen to reach millions of viewers. "Those who place personal power above family values will answer to the truth, because the truth in the end will always come to light." Then William dropped another bombshell. He announced the creation of the Charlotte and Louis Foundation, a new charity dedicated to supporting children with emotional trauma, helping them rebuild confidence and self-belief. He emphasized that the foundation was not just a charitable initiative, but a symbol of hope, love, and resilience. The message resonated deeply, sparking a wave of public support. Millions expressed empathy and hailed William as an exemplary father. The interview sent shock waves through the public. People dissected his words, connecting them to recent rumors and incidents. Immense pressure mounted on Camilla. Articles, talk shows, and online forums criticized her, demanding answers. Under unbearable scrutiny from the public and the royal establishment, Camilla was forced to hold a private press conference. She tried to maintain her composure, but her evasive eyes and clenched hands betrayed her strain. When a reporter pressed her with indirect evidence of media manipulation, Camilla, in a rare moment of unguardedness, inadvertently admitted her role. "I only wanted to ensure everything proceeded in proper order." Camilla stammered, her usual icy resolve, faltering. "I thought emphasizing George's role was necessary for the future." Her words trailed off, and her hesitation said it all. The public needed no further proof. The truth had been laid bare by her own admission. Charles, watching the press conference with a pained expression, finally faced the truth. He summoned Camilla to a private meeting and demanded she publicly apologize to Charlotte and Louis, while also stepping back from all royal media engagements for a year to reflect on her actions. This was a devastating blow to Camilla's power and reputation, forcing her to pay for her schemes. Charles, though still in love with Camilla, publicly committed to standing with William and his grandchildren, vowing that the monarchy would prioritize family over power and that past lessons would not be forgotten. William's battle ended in a resounding victory. He had reclaimed respect and love for his children, solidifying his position not only as a father, but as a wise and compassionate future leader. Shortly after, William received one final message from the anonymous sender. It was brief for Diana to protect her grandchildren. William realized it wasn't just any palace staffer, but an old friend of his mother, Diana. They had acted to honor Diana's legacy, shielding her grandchildren from malicious schemes. The story closed with William holding Charlotte and Louis tightly, promising they would always be loved, protected, and free to be themselves. He had fought not with force but with love and wisdom, forging a new future for the royal family, where sincerity and compassion triumphed over power plays. Diana's legacy now lived on most powerfully through her son and grandchildren.